Hello, Ryan Anderson, Legislative Analyst Office. If you turn to page 20 in today's agenda, you'll see a table describing a series of spending proposals related to behavioral support programs. These are programs that are designed to support students who struggle either academically or behaviorally. The first of these was included in the governor's May revision proposal. That was $30 million in one-time Proposition 98 funding to supplement a grant that was made last year for the development of a statewide framework for multi-tiered systems of support. The Assembly has approved that $30 million augmentation, and the Senate has approved $10 million for that purpose. The other two proposals here both come from the Assembly. One is to spend $20 million in one-time Proposition 98 funding for grants to LEAs to develop dropout and truancy prevention programs. And the other is to spend $6 million in one-time Proposition 63, that's the mental health services account funding, to develop pilot programs for innovative student mental health services in up to 10 schools. We are recommending the Senate package for the multi-tiered systems of support. I think this grant was just recently awarded, and it makes sense to ramp it up more slowly and give the legislature more time to review the initial funding for that grant. On the other two, we have no specific recommendation, but we would say an issue to consider would be that these are the types of programs that often are funded using unrestricted resources at a local level, and that may be an appropriate strategy for these issues as well. That's all.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Costa.
Thank you. Yes, the administration does not support either of the proposals. As the analyst has noted, we proposed $30 million in one-time Prop 98 general fund to help school districts implement a multi-tiered system of supports framework. Each house also adopted placeholder trailer bill language that, although it's still being negotiated and worked on, we have concerns that it would be more prescriptive in how the funding would actually be allocated.
Thank you. Back to the committee. Seeing no comments, we'll move on to issue 5, LCFF. Mr. Cabral.
Edgar Cabral with the Legislative Analyst Office. So on page 22 of your agenda, we have the specific item related to LCFF and local control and accountability plans. It really includes two pieces. One is just the overall additional funding for LCFF in the respective packages. The differences are fairly minor considering the size of LCFF. So the governor's May revision had $2.979 billion in augmentation. The Assembly has $2.974, so just $5 million less. And then the Senate has $3.01 billion, which is, again, it's a $31 million difference from the governor. These numbers, we think, will likely conform to whatever you decide to do on all the other K-12 or community college issues, and depending on what resources are available, the remainder would go towards transition funding. There's also a $45 million augmentation in one-time Prop 98 funding that's part of the Senate's plan. This is additional funding for the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence to conduct some statewide training on the evaluation rubrics, and also to conduct a pilot program for supporting local education agencies who need assistance. Just some background on this issue. The Collaborative was established in 2013. It was as part of the legislation that implemented the LCFF and created the local control and accountability plans. And the purpose of the Collaborative is to assist and advise school districts in helping them improve outcomes. During that budget, the state also provided a $10 million one-time amount to the Collaborative and set a framework for the governance of the Collaborative. There's a board where there are two appointees that are from the legislature, two essentially administration appointees, and the superintendent of public instruction. Since that time, the collaborative has slowly they've started hiring staff, and they have now an executive director and several staff, and their ongoing spending, which they've been using this $10 million. Their estimate for this year is about $1.8 million dollars for this budget year. We think there's about of that initial $10 million appropriated. We think there's about 5.7 million that would remain available at the end of 2016-17. The collaborative, there's not a lot of specific detail in statute regarding the specific activities that it's supposed to conduct. The one specific thing is that it's when requested by a county office of education or by the superintendent, the collaborative is supposed to provide assistance to a school district, charter school, or county office that needs the assistance. So I think there's just a couple issues for you to consider with this funding. I think, one, we think that you may want to consider using the amount of unspent funds currently that we think would be available at the end of the budget year that has already been provided to the collaborative, that could be used as part of whatever funding you want to provide for further activities. The other thing is that in this proposal, we do think that there's some, you might want a little more information kind of on the specific intent and purpose of the pilot. I think we understand that the collaborative will, in the long run, be intended to be an agency that would provide specific support. And so getting a better sense of what are the specific goals of the pilot, what does the collaborative want to learn, would help you make better decisions about what's the appropriate funding level. But it is making decisions about the collaborative's role and how much ongoing funding is an important conversation that will need to be made over the next several years as we roll out all of the various components associated with the LCFF.
Thank you. Ms. Costa.
Yes, we actually support the Senate's version, minus $23 million. I would bifurcate this issue slightly and say on the proposal regarding funding pilots, we'd note that this actually is already occurring. The collaborative has established a pilot with the Palo Verde Unified School District in March of this year. And so we don't believe that additional funding is required for that purpose. However, we do believe that the proposal regarding conducting statewide training on the evaluation rubrics has merit, and we would suggest utilizing $22 million for that purpose, one time.
Thank you. I did have a question for you regarding the LCAP process. I know that relative to many assembly members, there's been a concern about the lack of transparency regarding the LCAP process. I'm a public school parent myself and have found the process at times very cumbersome and non-transparent. I understand the state board is in the process of revisiting that process. So could you illuminate sort of your positions around how we could really fulfill the goals of LCFF, which is to really further engage parents and community members around that process?
Yeah, Thomas Todd, Finance. So you're correct. The board is actually in the midst of trying to sort of refocus the template for the LCAP, make it a little bit more transparent, make it a little more user-friendly, easier to understand, and they're also engaged in efforts to make sure that people are aware, of the various tools that are out there, particularly parents. So they're engaged in that work right now. They've already had one meeting on the subject back in March. They're going to discuss this issue again in July. Ultimately, revisions to the template for the LCAP will be adopted, I believe, at their September meeting. And one other feature that's being added, and this was a pretty significant demand, I think, from a lot of folks. So LCAPs, as you know, have become, at least in some places, fairly unwieldy, as a document, right? We're talking, some of these things are 150, 200 pages. So probably a little bit more than some folks expected when they were first envisioning looking at a document. And so one of the significant changes that is going to be put in place this year will be executive summaries for those documents. And those, by their very nature, should be much more palatable for the sort of general community. So for parents, non-parents, stakeholders, we believe that in and of itself is a very important change to the process. So I think, in summary, I would suggest that the board has heard the concerns about transparency and access to the tools and the documents so that parents and others can better understand what's going on in these. And so they're taking steps, I think, to address a lot of that.
Thank you. Beyond even a summary, I would really encourage you to take a look at some models. I know that when we had a presentation from the superintendent. Was it from San Juan Capistrano? Her presentation was very accessible and I believe a little more graphic. So would really urge you to take a look at her model. I know that currently you have a spreadsheet on the online right now, but I still find that rather unwieldy to get through, even as someone who understands what I'm looking at. Senator Lara.
Thank you. Just to dovetail on that, this has been an issue that's very important for the Latino caucus as well, about what really defines parental engagement, and what does that mean for districts in terms of really outreaching to parents, and does that mean you have a meeting at noon or a meeting at 1 p.m. where people are actually working? And it's been a concern for us for a while. And in terms of, again, the language appropriateness, the cultural sensitivity when it comes to a lot of our immigrant parents, 50% of our kids in our public schools are Latino. A big majority of those come from immigrant backgrounds. And you have school boards that don't reflect necessarily the population that they represent. So understanding that we need to ensure that we really get down to the weeds when it comes to what parental engagement means and what is expected from the school districts. It's something that it continues to be worrisome, and so I just wanted to make that a note.
Thank you, Senator. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, issue 6, college readiness. We're going to have Ms. Collins from LAO present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Natasha Collins with the Legislative Analyst's Office. On page 24 of your agenda, you'll see that the Senate has a proposal to increase college readiness amongst schools with high unduplicated pupil counts. So these are pupils that are classified as low income, foster youth, or English language learners. The proposal is $200 million over 3 years for these schools and school districts, as well as charters, to increase the college going rates through various activities of unduplicated students. These activities could include increasing access to college preparatory courses such as AP and A through G, increasing materials for SAT prep and SAT fees, and hiring college counselors. We would note that research indicates that high schools that enroll large percentages of low-income or English learners, foster youth, typically have lower course offerings in college preparatory courses than those that do not. We would also note that the Senate proposal adds language that would require the superintendent of public instruction to determine the per grant amounts for pupils accessing this grant, as well as a base amount for school districts. When the legislature considers this issue, we would note that the state already funds high school students at a higher base rate to account for the costs of things like college preparation. In addition, students from families that are unduplicated receive a significant significantly more per pupil amounts than youth that are not classified in this way. Schools are encouraged to use this funding to increase college and career readiness through their local accountability processes as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Costa.
Yes, I think there's a lot of commonality actually between the houses and the administration on a focus on 4-year graduation rates and 2-year graduation rates and transfer rates at our community colleges. So we'd like to continue working with the Senate, but at this juncture we support the Assembly version. I think we went about it in a slightly different way. We went about it with a focus really on the higher education segments, including increased funding for basic skills at community colleges, as well as funding UC Scout, which provides A to G free online coursework for California high school students. So I think there's some commonality with the goal. However, our approach is slightly different than what the Senate has offered.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Lara.
Thank you. You know, I do agree with you that we are spending more money on our LCFF kids, and specifically those 3 segments. But, you know, we're making assumptions that the schools where these kids are at actually have these college readiness programs, or the actual college courses required. We see that that's not the case. And just to note, last year, every high school graduate, we said it's supposed to have a college and be college and career ready. And last year, the legislature and the governor invested over $900 million over 3 years for career tech. I think it's time for us to look at ensuring that we do the same thing for college readiness. And this is where I think the spirit of our proposal comes from, ensuring that we also appropriately look at those students and make sure that they're not only career tech ready, but that we look at ensuring that they're college ready as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to issue 7, K-12 legislative augmentations. Ms. Collins was going to present again? No? Okay, just checking.
So if you turn to page, again, Natasha Collins with the LAO. If you turn to page 26 of your agenda, as the chair mentioned, these are a variety of legislative augmentations. Both the Assembly and the Senate provided augmentations to the after-school education and safety program. The Assembly provided $73 million in ongoing Proposition 98 funding to raise the per pupil rates for this program from $750 per day to $850 per day. And the Senate included trailer bill language that would apply a cost of living adjustment to this program moving forward. It has not had a cost of living adjustment in the past. If you'd like more information about this program, I'm happy to answer questions after, but I'll go through this fairly quickly. At the bottom of your agenda, you'll see that the Assembly and Senate both have proposals pertaining to the Association of Student Councils. Both propose $150,000, but the Assembly proposes that this funding be ongoing towards student councils, and the Senate proposes it as one-time funding. We would note that the student councils did receive state funding until 2012-13, with amounts ranging from $26,000 to $90,000. And this would be a pretty significant augmentation to what was awarded to the student councils in the past, and that providing $150,000 in one-time funds would support multiple years of costs for these programs using prior information. The other proposal that you'll see in the middle of your page is an Assembly proposal to provide $4 million in one-time Proposition 98 funding to expand an existing program known as the School Breakfast Startup Grant Program. This proposal would be to increase the number of schools that provide breakfast after the bell, as it's known. It's breakfast that is served after the school day starts. The proposal is for the $4 million in one-time funding to be spread over 4 years, and that for priority for this funding to go to schools that wish to start up or expand their breakfast programs to serve more breakfast after the bell. We would note that the program as it stands is $1 million annually and has been going on for 25 years now. This would be a significant augmentation to that. It would be doubling that amount for the next 4 years. We want to make sure that there is that demand for breakfast after the bell programs, and we're currently working with Department of Education staff to get a better sense, and advocates to get a better sense of whether these grant funds will be utilized by programs or by schools that wish to offer breakfast after the bell programs. The last issue you'll see on the legislative augmentations is $1 million in one-time Proposition 98 funding to go to the Los Angeles County Office of Education to contract with the Special Olympics Unify program. This proposal would provide certain activities through the Special Olympics Unify program to 300 schools in 2016-17. These activities would include things like sporting events and specialized curriculum. We would note that this program also receives private funding and federal funding, and that under LCFF and the increased rates that schools have now available to them, they would have the discretion to contract with entities such as this to provide services to their students if they felt it was a priority in their area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Costa.
The administration does not support any of the legislative augmentations included in this agenda item. As I stated at the beginning of our section on education, the administration remains committed to providing both local K-12 districts and community college districts with flexibility and discretionary funding to align their particular resources with the unique students that they serve. I would note that each of these items districts could fund within their existing discretionary funding provided by the state.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I noticed that the LAO did not comment on the after-school education and safety program, in which the Senate provides for a COLA in future years. The Assembly allocated money to bring that program up to where it might have been had it been getting any kind of cost of living increase over the past, how many years has it been since there was any increase in that?
I think 2006-07.
Okay, so for many years there has not been, and the amount of money that we allocate for this program, especially with its very rigid guidelines of you have to have, I believe, a staff member for every 20 students, so that if you cut back on programs or if you increase the salary of the people working in the programs, you have to cut slots. This is of great interest to me as a matter of public safety, since the research seems to show that the time that young people are most likely to get in trouble with law enforcement or be victims of crime are those after-school hours when they have no supervision and nothing to do. So I wondered if the administration, I noted that $80 million will be returned from the state preschool money this year. And that apparently that happens because some of the slots are underutilized. And if that was the source of where the Assembly was taking the money, that would seem like an easy trade-off to me. They're about equal amounts. Or how the Assembly was thinking about that, since I do feel that it would be an extremely good investment on many counts.
So our proposal was just ongoing funding. We did feel that it was fairly important, given that I'll just speak from my own personal position, but also I think I can speak for many parents, that if we didn't have after-school funding similar to childcare, we wouldn't be able to work.
That's right.
You know, my kids get off at 2:40, and if I had to go pick them up, I'd have to leave and get to San Francisco right now, which would be very difficult for me. So I know that my wife's in the same situation, that she can't pick up our kids until after 5 as well. So this is similar to the child care proposal, something that is really not only about children, but really about assisting working families, especially many families. All of us have to have 2 incomes in order to survive in this very expensive state, or if we're lucky enough to have 2 incomes, some of us only have 1 income. And again, it's extraordinarily critical, which is why we prioritize the child care early education proposal as well as the after-school education safety program.
Thank you.
I did, since I had the microphone, I did want to put in a plug for the Breakfast After the Bell program. I know that we currently do that in San Francisco Unified. My kids are at a school that we see this being used, and it's very effective, where the kids, a lot of times, the most needy kids are the ones who get to school late. Oftentimes their only meals are at school, and so if they miss breakfast, they don't get food. And so this is one of the only ways for many kids to get a meal, and if they don't get that meal, that they can't have that option of eating that meal during class, then they really go hungry till lunch. So again, I think it's a rather important program.
I would agree with that too.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your comments raise a question. So LEAs currently have the authority to be able to provide meals after the bell. Do we know how many are doing so?
How many are providing breakfast after the bell? We don't have a count of that, but we're working with the Department of Education to get that information, and we can share it with you. But currently, we're not sure.
I think that could be helpful for us to know. And then also, if there's any way to know if any problems arise as a result of it, or if it's actually working smoothly and serving the purpose for which the chairman has just described.
To clarify, we may not know how many schools are actually serving it, but I think we will probably be able to get information about how many schools have applied for these startup grants to offer the program.
Right. Thank you.
Perfect. That was my follow-up question, which is how many schools have applied, but also how many kids are actually being served with this $1 million annual funding?
I can't speak to how many students are being served, but the grants themselves are up to $15,000. So if you divide a million by 15, it's going to be in the 66 range.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we're going to move to issue 8, which is California Community Colleges, categoricals, and funding increases. Ms. Hyman.
Good afternoon. Judy Hyman, Legislative Analyst's Office. And I will start on page 28 of your agenda with an overview of the Community College Conference issues. The Governor, Senate, and Assembly plans all have significant new spending for the colleges. The Governor provides $7.3 billion in 2014-15, $8 billion in the current year, and $8.3 billion in 2016-17. Both houses provide an additional $7 million in 2016-17 above the governor's level. This is $388 million more than the 2015-16 Budget Act level and brings funding in 2016-17 to just over $7,000 per full-time equivalent student. On page 29, you can see that all three plans agree on a majority of the issues. They all include $200 million for a new strong workforce program to support career technical education and encourage regional collaboration, and $48 million to extend the CTE Pathways program. Both houses propose folding the Pathways program into the new strong workforce program beginning in 17-18. All three plans fund 2% enrollment growth and provide $106 million to reduce the mandates backlog. All plans augment the basic skills program, and both houses designate the program's funding in 2016-17 for basic skills transformation grants. All three increase the institutional effectiveness initiative, create a zero textbook cost degree initiative, and provide several smaller augmentations that are detailed in the last bullet on page 29. The plans do have some notable differences, however, starting on page 30 of your agenda. The Assembly provides funding to hire additional full-time faculty and promote equal employment opportunity in faculty hiring. The Senate restores funding for 4 student support categorical programs, whereas the Assembly provides funding for one of those programs. And both houses fund student outreach programs, but with different amounts, duration, and focuses. Continuing on page 31, the Assembly provides funds for Veterans Resource Centers and regional promise partnerships. The Senate provides additional base apportionment increases of over and above the $75 million that both the Governor and Assembly approved. The Senate also provides $3 million in reimbursement authority for inmate education programs. And lastly, the Senate adopts a Governor's May revision proposal to accelerate the progress of the online education initiative at the community colleges. These differences are summarized on page 32 of your agenda. That concludes the overview and takes us to the first agenda item on page 33.
Thank you. Ms. Costa? Or did you want to continue? I'm sorry.
Would you like me to describe the agenda item?
Sure.
Sure. The governor provides $25 million one time for innovation awards and $20 million one time for the online education initiative. The Assembly rejects both governor's proposals and provides $22 million to hire more full-time faculty. This would result in about 200 additional full-time faculty members. The Assembly also provides $15 million to support veterans resource centers and $15 million to support regional promise partnerships that would be designed to reduce a student's time to degree. The Assembly also provides $1.5 million for outreach and marketing on college access and affordability for non-English speaking families and underserved communities. The Senate rejects the Governor's Innovation Award proposal, but adopts the online education proposal. The Senate also provides $11 million for 4 student support programs: CalWorks Student Services, the Mesa, Puente, and Middle College High School programs. The Senate provides $5 million one time for outreach specifically on financial aid and baccalaureate degree pilot programs, and $3 million, as I mentioned, for inmate education activities. This would include $2 million one time to fund 5 pilot inmate education programs and $1 million ongoing for coordination through the Chancellor's Office. And this item would be a conforming item to an issue in the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation budget.
Thank you, Ms. Costa.
I'll start by just keeping my comments high level, and if there are questions about particular proposals, we'd be happy to address them. The administration doesn't support either of the packages. I think, as I said at the beginning, we've tried to build the 98 budget both on the K-12 and the community college side by providing discretion to districts. And so to the degree that there are what we would consider categorical programs funded, we oppose those. Additionally, as the analyst noted, we had several proposals that we continue to support, which includes funding for the Innovation Awards as well as for the Online Education Initiative.
I had a question for Ms. Costa. Ms. Costa, regarding the Innovation Awards, rather than making it an application process, why not just award programs that you find are already doing innovation?